let's say for like an Ironman time, they might actually drop their pace per 100 by 10 seconds or more, 10 or 15 seconds per 100.
That Triathlon Show, episode 46. Hello, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another episode of That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. As always, I'm your host Michael, and today's episode is about a tool that can be used by either time-crunched or pool-restricted athletes, or just performance-driven athletes in general that want to give their swim training a new dimension and take it up a notch. So my guest today is Rob Sleamaker, who is the founder of Vasa, which is a company that pioneered the market for swim training benches and changed dryland swim training forever, way back when in the 80s when Rob first invented the Vasa swim trainer. So Vasa trainers, that's actually not the official product name, but they are commonly called Vasa trainers. They have a couple of different versions. They've been used by, for example, the US Olympic swimming squads for all the Olympics since 1996 in Atlanta, and they are now, and have been for many years already, making headway into triathletes training regimes as well. So this is an exciting one. We talk a bit about how, for example, the Swim ERG, which is a training bench with a power meter, allows you to train in precise power zones just like you would in cycling, and how this allows you to improve your fitness at a rapid rate. And another important benefit is that it may actually be easier to improve your technique and learn exact movement patterns for swimming in the dry comfort of your living room on a Vasa trainer, compared to, especially maybe if you are finding it a bit intimidating to get into the pool if you're a complete beginner, getting somebody to, in that case, maybe getting somebody to actually show you the exact movement patterns on the bench would be beneficial. And of course, as mentioned already, time-crunched and pool-restricted triathletes all over the world are really using the Vasa trainers to not only get them through the swim part, even though they maybe can't get to the pool to train, but they can train at home and do it very quickly. But actually, some of them are getting through really fast on just dryland training, which I find pretty amazing. But that's it for this intro. Let's dive right into the interview. All right, today's interviewee on That Triathlon Show is Rob Sleamaker of Vasa. Rob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Really good, really good. I've had a busy day with trying to prepare my apartment for being sold, and then onboarding a couple of coaching clients. So that was really good. I just got done with that, and on top of all my training. So it's been super busy, but now I'll top it off with another great, exciting interview. So why don't you tell me and the listeners about Vasa and what it is that you do? What is your main product line?
Yeah, thanks. Well, it's a pleasure to do this with you, and to meet you this way, and using all the modern technology to be able to do this interview, because here we are in Vermont, USA, and you're in Finland, and it's amazing to me that you can make this happen. So anyway, Vasa is it's a company. We make sport-specific exercise equipment that really helps people to become stronger and better and faster in particular swimming sports. But we also have a line of ergometers for paddling sports like kayaking and stand-up paddling, etc. But our main focus has always been on helping people use our products to improve their swimming. And we make a couple of products right now. The Vasa Swim Trainer, or Vasa Trainer as it's known, is more of a strength training piece of equipment that's been around since 1990, really. And it works by pulling your body weight. You lay down on a bench, padded bench that rolls along a monorail, and you pull your body weight up and then lower back down this monorail. So for swimming, you do the specific swim stroke movement, and then with that same piece of equipment, people can do a multitude of exercises that are sport specific as well as general functional fitness exercises. You can do like, over 100 different exercises. So that's really great and then we make the swim ergometer, which is basically, think of it like a rowing machine for swimming. And it has, again, the same monorail and padded bench that rolls along the incline. But when people lay down and start doing the swimming motion, they're pulling on swim paddles that pull a drive cord on each side, right and left side, which makes a flywheel go around, a fan air resistance flywheel. And we also have the ergometer has very precise measurement of power and other metrics. So you can look at this display power meter to see whether your right and left side are in balance or out of balance, and that becomes especially critical when fatigue starts to set in. So with both of our swim trainer products, the Vasa trainer and the Vasa Swim ERG, people can do they can get better at swimming, they can do their swim training, they can recover from injury when they can't get into the water, or if they can't get to a pool or can't get to open water because of weather or lack of access or just time crunched, then people can really get their swim training done. If you think a good analogy is, many of the triathletes you talk with probably use an indoor bike trainer or treadmills. So
I hope they do, because otherwise they're missing out.
yeah, well, unless they can get outdoors in the winter, then maybe they can do some cross country skiing or things. But the point being that the Vasa Swim ERG and also the trainer, they allow people to get it done indoors, and you get very specific swim training indoors. The Swim ERG gives you the feedback, the very precise electronic feedback, whereas the trainer is more basic than that. So
Is one point I want to clarify here, is the Vasa trainer and the Swim ERG, are they essentially the same in the movements that you do, but the Swim ERG has the power meter, or was there some difference in the movements that you make as well?
yeah, it's a very good question. So with the trainer, if you think of the stroke, that from entry to the water and pulling all the way through the stroke, that part is the same on both machines. But on the trainer, when you pull all the way through, now your body weight has come up the incline of this monorail. The monorail you can change the angle of it for resistance. So now you've got to be able to lower yourself back down and then do the next stroke. Like, think of it like a pull-up in that way. You have to pull yourself up and then you have to lower yourself back down. The ergometer is different because the right and left arm is independent, and when you pull on the drive cord, it makes the fan wheel go around. So your body doesn't go up and down the incline so much, and it's not dependent on that.
Got it. So the trainer is like the doggy paddle drill, as it's called. I would say then.
Not exactly a doggy paddle, but think of it like doing most people use it. They do like a 2-arm butterfly kind of stroke, which really does benefit freestyle, as far as a conditioning point of view. I mean, you can do freestyle on the trainer we have a pulley cable system that allows you to do alternating arms, but it does not feel the same as doing the ergometer, which is when you pull a fan wheel or air resistance, it's very, very similar feeling to pulling through water in terms of the resistance.
Mm. Yeah, and so you already mentioned some of the benefits that triathletes can get from it, and but why don't we dig a little bit deeper into it? Is this just for people who are really short on time, or is there some benefits in maybe even combining this with regular pool swimming and having this as a dedicated session in your
Yeah.
training program?
All of the above, Mikhail. It's all of the above. It really depends on the person's ability, their availability for in terms of time or to a pool, and sometimes just preference. So I'll give you some examples. An age group triathlete who is really time crunched, and maybe just it's very difficult for them to do consistent swimming, which is very important. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but about the importance of consistent training, swim training. But if they're not able to get the consistent swim training in, then this is a tool that they can use in their home or at their fitness club that allows them to get a very high quality swim specific workout in a short period of time. Because especially like the Swim ERG, if people are familiar with the expression pulling, where you swim with a pull buoy between your legs, that's essentially what the Swim ERG is doing, because you're not really kicking with it. It's really all about the upper body stroke, which is most of open water swimming anyway. They don't kick much in open water except for balance in the water. Most people don't kick for propulsion very much. So you have that. It's a substitute for them getting a workout in a pool or open water. And then you've got the elite level. Many in the U.S., many elite level swimmers, competitive pool swimmers, train with our equipment because they want to be able to have greater a greater ability to deliver power in the right range of motion and in the correct technique. So, a lot of swim programs and swim coaches over here have, multiple Vasa trainers and swim ergs as part of their overall dryland training. Sometimes they have situations where a swimmer is injured, maybe a cut on their foot or their leg or a knee problem or whatever, and they can't go in the water. So they can stay fit for swimming by using our products, using the Vasa products, and they work really well. So think of it like a full range of different types of athletes and the needs that they have. And even coaches, even swim coaches and triathlon coaches, they'll get athletes on our equipment and work with them to teach them the correct stroke path and say, okay, now go in the water and do what we just did on the Vasa. That's what we want you to do. Because when you're on land, it's really easy to see if someone is using the correct technique. Maybe they're bending too much at the wrist. And, I like to say, keep your fingertips to elbow crease as one straight line, or like a blade, like a kayak blade or a canoe blade. Keep that straight. A lot of people bend at the wrist, and a lot of people cross over their midline, like with an S-shaped pull, and they shouldn't do that. But when they're doing a swim workout on the ERG or the Vasa trainer, you can see it, and you can't see it in the water very well, but you can really see their flaws when they're on land like that.
And have you found that this technical training aspect of the Vasa and the ERG, that they translate well when you get the athlete back into the pool?
Absolutely. It's really interesting you mentioned that and asked that question, because some people who are skeptical or whatever, they think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get one of these, or I'm going to train on a Vasa Swim ERG, and I'll try to swim on it like I do in the water. And after a few weeks, what happens is they get back in the water and they say, I need to swim in the water like I do on the Vasa, because the framework of our machines really reinforces using a proper stroke path, not crossing midline, reaching, sort of piercing the water and, reaching down and getting to a high elbow catch position quickly, and then pulling back, sort of straight back parallel to the monorail. And when you do that and then engage your core rotator muscles at the same time, it really reinforces proper form. And then people get in the water and go, wow, if I do that in the water, I'm so much more powerful and so much more efficient. So that's what happens.
Can you just, in broad brush strokes, give an overview of what the distribution of technical benefits that you can get versus power and fitness benefits you can get from the Vasa and the ERG are for athletes in on average?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. So, I'm gonna pick on triathletes for a minute because many triathletes, they're adult learned swimmers, or maybe they swim recreationally as kids, but they never really refined their stroke technique. If they swim on a competitive swim team, they probably have pretty good technique. So I don't want to talk about that. But in general, a lot of adult learned swimmers don't understand the concept of being able to access the large muscles in the back, the lats, and also they also don't understand the need to coordinate the strong muscles of the torso, of your abs and your lower back, that do two things. If you can coordinate those with stabilizing yourself in the water so you can get more energy into the pulling arm, that's going to help propulsion. And then the other part of that is coordinating right at the high elbow catch, driving the opposite hip toward the bottom of the pool or the bottom of the lake or whatever. Then now you're gaining some more power from those big torso muscles, and delivering that power into the pulling arm. And that's a really tough thing for people to understand. The other aspect that happens a lot is adult learned swimmers doing freestyle, and triathletes especially, they do what we call a mono speed, or a single speed, when they pull. So hand will enter the water. Even if they've got a real pretty technique and they get into a high elbow catch position, at the catch, they fail to accelerate the arm. They just keep the same mono speed all the way through, from entry to exit. And the problem with that is, if you don't, when a swimmer gets to that high elbow catch position, they need to think about really crushing, just like you crush the pedal. You know, when you're doing a downstroke on your pedal, you really want to crush the pedal and carry that momentum all the way through the pedal stroke. Well, in swimming, you get to a high elbow catch position and then really crush pulling backwards, because that way you're accessing the big muscles of the lats in the back and the big muscles of the torso to give you propulsion. So it's a concept that's hard for people to understand, but you get to that high elbow catch position, really accelerate the blade as you pull backwards.
Yeah, and I can imagine it being a great tool, because I mean, not only knowing what you said about how to engage all those muscle groups, but actually executing it is a different thing entirely, and that's not easy. But if you are forced to do it because it's just the way that the product is designed, then that is bound to help you in some way get a better execution of those movement patterns.
Yeah, well, and interesting enough, on the Swim ERG, because of the power meter and because of the ability to look at the right and left side power, so that concept I just described of accelerating the blade, I call it accelerating the blade, or the hand speed, as they pull back. The power numbers can tell the story, because in fact, I'll tell a great story about an American Olympian who, his coach had him start doing Swim ERG workouts, and he noticed, like, wow, this guy's upper body power is not very high. So what's going on? How is he able to swim as fast as he's swimming? And this particular athlete had been a high school swimmer, and he's more a stronger runner and biker, but he had decent technique. Well, anyway, the coach did an analysis. He said, let's get this guy in the water and do a video recording. So they had him go in the pool, set up the video, and they said, we're going to do a time trial for speed. You're going to go as fast as you can, like at race pace, for this distance, and we're going to video record you. Well, here's what they discovered. He was kicking like a madman, really kicking, and that was how he swam, because he had to compensate for a weak upper body, and also he wasn't really catching the water at the right place to use his lats. So as soon as the coach figured this out. He used the Swim ERG as a diagnostic tool in this regard. And he said, we got to lift this guy's upper body power and get him to kick a little bit less when he's racing, because they needed him to save his legs for the final 400 meters of the run. And he was wasting his legs on the swim. So they were able to figure this out. And that's just one example of how you can do that. Now, the other thing about the power meter shows if someone is not doing that hand acceleration at the catch, the power numbers will be low. But as soon as they learn this concept and they really start to access their lats and accelerate, the power numbers will jump 10, 15, maybe 20 watts on average. And that's what every athlete should aspire to do, is to raise their ability to sustain a higher power output for the duration of the interval or the time trial, or just whatever the workout is that they're doing on the Swim ERG. And that really translates over to the water, because if they're putting it all together technique-wise, but they've also been conditioning the swimming specific muscles to be able to sustain a higher power output, then they may not, like in a race situation, they might not finish the distance a lot faster. But what typically happens is they finish that triathlon swim spending a lot less energy than they did before, because they're using the big muscles of the lats rather than the small muscles of the arms and shoulders. They are swimming more efficiently and not kicking as much. And so they're going to just spend less energy, hopefully swim it faster, but definitely save more energy for the bike and the run.
Yeah, and another thing on those power numbers, as a coach, I can imagine that it would be so useful to be able to prescribe, like you do bike workouts, in terms of power, and at a certain percentage of your functional threshold, for example, I'm sure you have tests that you have developed that you can use to develop some sort of similar metric in swimming for the Swim ERG, and having that be the metric for a certain prescribed workout for the athlete. And that will be something that is more controlled, because in the pool, especially newer or even intermediate swimmers have a hard time really pushing themselves a lot. I realized in the pool, the same way that they can do on the bike and the run. It's just because it's such a foreign environment to them, so they don't really get to those intensities I feel like they could do if it was a hard run or a hard bike. It's difficult to push yourself mentally to really dig deep and go to the well, so to say.
Well, that's exactly right. And there's a couple of things that create that situation in the water, especially if they're an adult learned swimmer and they're not used to, using an efficient technique to go really fast. And one of the factors is, as people get more fatigued, the technique starts to fall apart more, and then that just begets less efficiency, and then they're working harder to go the same distance. So one of the things that keeps happening, it keeps being reported by people using the Swim ERG as part of their training, is they're able to see both in terms of what their physical technique is doing, but also the power numbers. When fatigue starts to hit, what's going on with their form, and you'll see that the less skilled swimmers, when they reach a fatigued state on the Swim ERG, then they will start to drop their elbow a little bit, or but because they can see what's happening, it's that instant biofeedback, so they can, unless they're not paying attention, they can really make those corrections and say, oh, my power number's dropping off. Oh yeah, my elbow's dropping. I better get back on top of that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the analogy is like if I'm riding my bike and all of a sudden I notice that I'm drifting off to the side and I'm about to go off the road. Well, you would make a correction, right? But in the water, it's very difficult to see what's happening to your form once fatigue sets in. So you could go off the road. I'm using that as an analogy, but you can, the technique can start to fall apart, but they're still moving in the pool or in the water. It's just that it's a lot less efficient and not as fast. And the erg can help. Training on the erg can help correct all of that.
Mm. So you mentioned that one of the main benefits might be not in how much faster you go in races, but in preserving energy for the bike and run. But I'm sure that you have some example of improvements that athletes have made using the Swim ERG or the Vasa trainer. And keep this short, but can you give us some example of what kind of improvements you can see using those products?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna tap my memory here a little bit, but I mean, we do get reports from customers who are training on the Swim ERG, and they, let's say for like an Ironman time, they might actually drop their pace per 100 by 10 seconds or more, 10 or 15 seconds per 100 meters. So that adds up in a race.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and we hear those reports on a regular basis. We get that kind of report. On a half Ironman, similar kind of improvements. But I think the thing that I'm noticing that means a lot more to me. I mean, I'm glad when people are swimming faster and more efficiently and all of that stuff. But I think the reports that customers give that mean the most to me as the owner of the company and the creator of these products is that if you work backwards from the start of a race, right? You're ready to jump in the water at the start of a race. How confident are you feeling? How prepared are you feeling? And if you work backwards through the weeks of training that you've been doing, and you ask, well, how was my swim training? Was I consistent? Was I getting good quality swim training? Have I done some benchmark swims along the way to see that I'm actually swimming a little bit faster and more efficient? My confidence is higher, or am I showing up? Think of it like back in school. Did I study for the test or did I not study for the test? How am I feeling before this test? And so that's why I encourage people to say, be realistic about your how you're getting your swim training done. And if you're skipping swim workouts, whether it's on one of a Vasa Swim ERG or whether it's using tubing or whether it's getting to the pool or the open water with your team or whatever, but if you're not being consistent and you're also not getting quality, if you're just kind of going through the motions and not getting quality swim training, then on the day of the test, you're not going to be feeling as confident. And when people do a triathlon swim and they get beat up emotionally or they get beat up physically in the swim, then they start the bike, and you've got to, unless they're well trained mentally, they're going to not feel as confident on the bike, and they're not going to feel as confident on the run. And so that's why it's so important, I think, for people to take preparation for the swim seriously, because it sets the stage for the rest of your day. And my goal is that people doing a triathlon, that they end up, not only do they set their personal records and all of that stuff, but they end up finishing that event feeling joyous and feeling really good about themselves, that they prepared and that they had a great time.
Yeah, and speaking about this preparation, then just trying to give a really brief example, because we're running short of time here, but of a workout that you could do and how you set up workouts essentially on the Vasa or the Swim ERG. So what would a basic staple workout for your average age grouper look like?
Right. So I think the best way I can answer that is, if most people are following a training program, I hope they can really easily translate almost any swim workout, the swim sets that are on their program, and think of it like intervals. It's similar to cycling too. You can do an interval workout, or you can do a low intensity distance workout, or a long distance, workout, or you could do a time trial, like a race pace time trial. And the one thing I would say about the difference between swimming in the water and swimming on a Vasa Swim ERG is that on the erg, you want to think of it very similar to doing a swim in the water with a pull buoy. You're not kicking. On the erg, you're not kicking. You're just pulling. So it's that kind of a workout, which means that the power meter times for any given distance are going to be pretty similar to your time in the water if you were only pulling, not kicking, just pulling in open water. So like there's no push off the wall, there's no kicking. So the pace per 100 on the swim erg is going to be very similar to your pace per 100 when you're pulling in open water, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So if let's say that your threshold pace pulling would be 145 per 100, and you have a workout on your program that is 15 by 100 and 15-second recoveries, then you would just do 1 45 minute or 1 minute 45-second intervals on the swim erg, and with 15 minutes recovery in between,
Yeah,
and you
15
would have some.
seconds, 15 seconds
Yeah,
recovery.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. And there again, you would probably just want to do it for the time and not worry. If you're looking at the power meter on the erg, you would go for the 145 at that intensity, with the 15-second rest. But don't look at the meters that you've the meters that are displaying on the power meter are not going to be the same meters that you might have in the water.
Yeah, yeah, it's like bike training
Yeah,
usually. Usually we train by time intervals anyway.
exactly. Very similar to using a bike trainer.
Yeah. So how can you get a Vasa trainer yourself, or a swim erg, or get to train on one?
Sure. Well, if someone wants to purchase one, or clubs one to get them, the best thing to do is go to our website, which is vasatrainer.com. That's V as in Victor, ASATRAINER.com. Or and then they can find out if there's a dealer in their country, or they can buy directly from our company here in the USA, and we ship worldwide. Um, the Swim ERG is currently selling for just under $2,000 US, and the trainer sells for $950 US, plus the freight, the shipping, whatever, to get it wherever you are. They can also go either to our website or even contact our customer service to find out if there's one in their area, or not just one, but maybe multiple machines in their area. Just depends on where they are.
Yeah, okay, great. And we'll have all those links on the show notes. I'm just doing the math here real quick. If it takes me, let's say, 1 hour to commute to and from the swimming pool, plus changing and showering and stuff, well, obviously I need to shower anyway, but commuting and changing, then how many hours would I need to do? And assuming I have some sort of value on my hourly rate or so to make it worth the purchase, and it's not too many, to be honest. You get your money's worth back pretty quickly.
Yeah, you really
So
do. Yeah, and if you factor in, obviously people's time is worth so much to them, but then, the obvious of the expense of being a member at a club, the transportation cost, all of those things, go in. And I think I sent in a link, or maybe I sent a little note to you about. I think there's a coach here. There's a coach here in the U.S. named Patrick McCran from. He's a triathlon coach, and he made a really interesting point. It said it would be like, sometimes when you have to commute to do your swim, it's almost like saying to your friend, "Okay, let's meet to go for a run." And then you meet at a certain time, but then you have to stand there for 45 minutes before you start your run. So you waste that whole time commuting to go swimming or changing to go swimming. Whereas when you have a Vasa swim erg right there, you just get on it and get going, and you're done.
yeah,
You're done. In the length of time that it would take you to get to your pool, just one direction, you've got your swim workout done.
yeah. That being said, Rob, I have to be honest. I don't think that any triathlete that has the option to go to a pool should skip going to the pool at all. But it can be a great to replace one of your 2 or 3 swim workouts per week. and get both the training benefits and save some time on that commute.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, as a coach yet. Although that being said, I haven't used the trainer myself, so maybe it's just like magic. But at this point, I wouldn't like tell anybody to completely stop doing swim
Yeah,
workouts,
no,
because I still think that you train in the water.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think that, people are somewhere along a spectrum of their ability to swim, efficiently, and then they've also got the other issues of time. I mean, there's a great story on our blog that about this one doctor in here in the U.S. who he ended up, because of his schedule and his family and everything, and the pool was closed, he ended up having to use his swim rig almost all the time. And he trained for an Ironman, and he did really well. Now, he wasn't a competitive swimmer growing up or anything like that, but it allowed him to get the work done. And, was it as ideal as being able to go to the pool or open water a couple of 3 times a week? I don't know. It's really hard to do a scientific study on something like that. But again, what I would encourage people to do is be realistic about your capabilities to get consistent quality swim training in, and surround yourself with opportunities to get that in. And if one of those solutions is having, a dryland trainer at home, like a Vasa Swim ERG or trainer, then you should have that as one of your tools in your toolbox, just like having the pool or being part of a master swim club or getting some coaching. All of those things are the tools that allow someone to show up at the race prepared.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and exactly. And I just talked to Chad Timmerman on another interview. He's working for or co-founder of Trainer Road, which does software for bike trainers. And I said to him as well that I don't think that you should do all your training on the trainer, but you can do a lot of it on your trainer, and it will be very effective. And yeah, a tool in the toolbox and allowing you to get in consistency. So we have to start to wrap it up here, but I have 3 rapid fire questions for you, and I want to challenge you to keep this really short. So starting with, what's your favorite book, blog, or resource related to triathlon or swimming?
Okay, for triathlon, I'd have to say slowtwitch.com. And
Great.
for swimming, I refer a lot to it's called swimmingworld.com.
All right. We'll have that linked up in the show notes.
And my favorite book, it's not really related to either of those sports specifically, but everyone should read The Boys in the Boat.
Never heard of that.
It's about the 1936 U.S. rowing team, but it's very inspirational.
Okay. What's your favorite piece of gear or equipment, excluding any Vasa products?
Do you mean gear for
Endurance sports, swimming, I would say.
Oh, okay, for swimming?
Yeah.
I think one of the most useful pieces of gear for triathletes is a front mount snorkel.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's an excellent one. And friend of the show, Jerry Rodriguez, is a big proponent. And listeners can go back to episode 3 and have a listen to that. And also, speaking about past guests, Carlin Pipes is kind of an ambassador for Vasa, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she worked with us to develop some educational videos. And yeah, she's a very good, very effective, swim technique guru, as is Jerry Rodriguez. They're both really fantastic.
Yeah, we'll link to those episodes in the show notes as well. Finally, what do you wish you had known or wish you had done differently at some point in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. I think maybe when as an athlete and even as a coach, I think I wish I had known back in the 90s, 1990s, when I was doing more of my coaching. I wish I had understood a little bit more about the value of high quality fats and protein in the fuel substrate mix. I came sort of the full spectrum, but did a lot of the high complex carbohydrate. And I think maybe it was a little bit misleading. I wish I had not understood a little bit more about the high quality fats and proteins.
Yeah, that's a good one, and a new one. Many people mention things like recovery and sleep, but yeah, good to get some new answers to this question. All right, this has been Rob Sleamaker of Vasa Trainer. Final words: where can people find you? Do you have a Twitter account that you want to mention? Your website will be in the show notes, of course.
Yeah, well, yeah, we do have uh, a presence on Facebook. It's just Vasa Inc. Vasa, comma Inc. Inc. I think we have an Instagram account, but I'm not super savvy with that. We have a great YouTube channel. In fact, you mentioned Carlin Pipes, but people can go on YouTube and just type in Vasa Trainer, and we have a complete swim clinic video series that Carlin Pipes helped us with, and great response. I mean, one of the videos has over 2.3 million views on that video, and people, they love it because she teaches, even though she teaches a lot of the things using the Swim ERG as think of it like just a teaching tool or a prop. She shows how to integrate all those lessons into the water. And I think that's something people should take advantage of, whether they ever buy one of our pieces of equipment or not. Watching her video clinic series on our YouTube channel can be very valuable.
Yeah, and we'll link to that as well in the show notes, of course. All right, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Rob. Thanks for taking the time.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Michael, for having me.
All right, so that's a wrap for another interview, and I have to say that I'm pretty tempted by the Vasa Trainer and the Swim ERG, particularly myself. I really think that it can be a great way to add some high quality training, both from a fitness and a technical point of view. And I gotta thank Rob again. He was a great guest and also a very nice guy. And we talked for a long time after the interview. And among other things, we talked about how I can get to try one of these because I really want to do that. And yeah, we're working on that. And thank you, Rob, for all your pieces of advice and everything that we talked about afterwards. In other news here towards the end of the episode, I want to give a big shout out to Nuno Placeres, who was our guest on episode 25, talking about aerodynamics for cycling from a very scientific and also, well, data-driven point of view. And he recently raced Challenge Roth, which is an iron distance race, if you don't know that, in Germany, one of the biggest ones around. And he had a goal of going sub 10. He ended up going 10:40, but he was 37th, I believe, out of 390 in his age group. He is 51, so Nuno is definitely a fantastic athlete, and he would have probably gone pretty easily sub 10 had it not been for the fact that he missed most of the last 2 months of run training due to an Achilles tendon injury. And even the month before the race, that started to affect his bike training and reduced that a lot. So he went into the race with a massive handicap, but still performed extremely well with those circumstances. And I was emailing with Nuno back and forth since, as I mentioned, I am moving to Lisbon, which is where Nuno lives as well. And thank you for all the help with that to Nuno. But we talked about Challenge Roth as well, and Nuno has a race report that I will link to. And I'll just briefly list bullet point style these main points that Nuno mentioned that he had been using for this race, so that you can take that as a case study and some inspiration for what is one way to go about bringing out a really good performance. Because make no mistake, this was a great performance by Nuno, and had it not been for that injury, he would have been way up close to the podium of his age group, which at Roth is really massive. So the first was his approach to long rides has become to always push hard or even very hard in the last third or quarter of the workout. So he's talking zone 3 all the way up to zone 5 after 3 hours of riding. And this gives him both a mental boost and also a physiological boost in terms of that it's a hell of a lot of stress. So if you can adapt to that stress, then that's way to go. The second point is he went on a low carb diet from 10 to 21 days prior to an event. I don't think that he actually mentioned, or I don't remember how far ahead of Roth he went on that, but he did anyway. And although during some high intensity training or long rides, he does fuel with some carbs, this allowed him to drop 2% of body fat in those last few weeks. And he also speculates that it might allow for increased fat metabolism. I want to be careful here because this is a pretty short period of time, so I don't remember off the top of my head what current research studies say about that, but he did feel really good and in the race, so that just goes to show that whatever works, everybody is an N=1 experiment. And also Nuno said specifically that he's not doing it to top up on glycogen stores, which is the old carb depletion nutrition taper model, which has gone out of fashion for good reason. It has been shown that it's not really that much more efficient if your goal is to just really maximize your glycogen stores. And Nuno is well aware of that, and that is not the reason. It was the body composition and potentially fat metabolism. But then he did fuel in the race with 90 grams of carbs per hour on the bike, which is at the very high end. But if you can sustain that, it is recommended because you're always going to be burning more energy than you can absorb anyway. So trying to stay at the high end is definitely great. And Nuno did that to great effect. He also started doing daily dry sauna sessions of 20 minutes from 10 days out of the race, and heat adaptation, briefly mentioned on episode 38 with Chad Timmerman from Trainer Road. And finally, a lot of Nuno's training. This is not specific to Roth, but I wanted to put it in there because I think it's very, very interesting. A lot of Nuno's training is his quality training is zone 6 or even zone 7. So we're talking super hard, but very short anaerobic or even neuromuscular power intervals with relatively long recovery. So these can be like 30-second max intervals or 10-second max intervals if it's a neuromuscular power interval. So just to give you some perspective and a very polarized approach to training. All right, I'm running very long with this interview once again. I hope that you don't mind. I think that this will be useful as a case study, but I'll link the full report of Nuno's race and his preparation, which is very educational, up in the show notes, which can be found, of course, on thattriathlonshow.com. And you can email me on michael@scientifictriathlon.com. That's Michael with a K, or hit me up on Twitter @SciTriat. If you're not already subscribed to the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button in your podcast player app so that you get the next episode on Monday. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, but I have a couple of different options. I haven't actually decided yet which one I'm going to put in there, but it's going to be something very, very useful that whatever one it is, it's going to be something that has been requested a lot. So subscribe so that you get that automatically as soon as it's released. Until Monday, keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.